three. Shimon ben Nada says one decorates the Bikurim with other than the seven species. Reb Kiva says one decorates the Bikurim only with seven species. Reb Shimon says there are three aspects in Bikurim: the Bikurim, the additions to Bikurim, and the decorations to Bikurim. The addition to the Bikurim is of the like kind. The decoration of the Bikurim can be of an unlike kind. The addition to the Bikurim must be eaten in a state of cleanliness and exempt from demai, and the decoration of the Bikurim are liable to demai. Thank you. My wife bringing my coffee.
Okay.
And in what case did they say that the addition to the Bikurim is like the Bikurim? When it comes to Eretz Yisrael, but if it does not come from Eretz Yisrael, it is not like Bikurim.
Okay. Good base. Lama amru habikurim kenichse kohen. So how is it that the bikurim are the property of the kohen? Sheyukoneh mehem avadim v'karkaos v'behemoth. He can use them for barter, to sell them, whatever, and he can buy slaves and land and horses or whatever. Ubal chov notlan b'chovo, and he can actually use them to pay off his debts. Va'isha b'ksubasa, and also he can pay off his wife's ksuba with with the value of the Bikurim. So even though it has a kedusha to it, it's nonetheless his property, and he's allowed to trade with it.
It's
Uh,
interesting that it says you can buy non-kosher animals, though.
yeah, that's right. You can buy a non-kosher. You can buy a horse. You can.
Right, 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 and then sell it to something else. I guess, yeah.
I mean,
Okay,
you can buy the horse for riding or for work or
true, true.
whatever. Whatever you want with it. Kaseifer Torah. In other words, that also a safe, what this mission is coming to tell us, it's not trying to say, oh, you know how a Sefer Torah is like this. I think it's actually coming with the Chiddush and say that a Sefer Torah has actually the same din, that a Sefer Torah is also something that's considered property, and it could be seized by a Baal Chov in order to pay for a debt. Now, you're not allowed to use a Sefer Torah. I mean, we have that whole thing in Megillah about the order of Kedusha, that you're not allowed to sell a Sefer Torah for lesser Kedusha. But if you have a creditor who wants to seize some assets, and the only asset he can seize is a Sefer Torah, he's allowed to do that. Okay. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Ein nosni nosam ela lechaver b'tova. So Rabbi Yehuda disagrees with this psak. He says you can only give them to a chaver, who's somebody who is trusted with kedusha and tuma and tara, as opposed to an amaretz. Okay, betova for as a gift. And sorry, betova klamash rashaya kohen. So he's allowed to be grateful to a person who gave them the Bikurim. Sorry, I beg your pardon. This is not it's not a contradiction to the previous statement. What we're saying, I think the Kahati actually points out that there's another Gerson that just says Rabbi Yehuda Omer ein nosnim osam ela lechaver b'tova, that when the Yisrael comes with his Bikurim and he wants to give it to a Kohen, he needs to choose a Kohen who's trusted with Kedusha, not just like a Stam Amaretz Kohen. And there were Amaretz Kohanim, because you want to see have somebody who's going to treat it with the proper respect. But Tova, in other words, that the Kohen is allowed to show gratitude to the person who gave it to him because he chose him, as opposed to there's some situations where you cannot show gratitude, like there was that. Remember the machlokes about Shvius with Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai, and there was an argument about who said what, about it, when you go into somebody's field and pick their fruit during the Shemitah, are you allowed to say thank you? Because
Okay, right.
Shemitah produce is hefker. You don't want to give the impression that it belongs to the violin. So here, is it just like a nameless, faceless gift that the Kohen is entitled to, and he doesn't, and he shouldn't show gratitude, or should he say thank you for choosing me? Yes, says Rabbi Yehuda, you can show gratitude for that. But Chachamim omrim nosnim osam la'anshe mishmar. No, you give it to whoever is on duty at the time that you come to Yerushalayim. V'hei mechalkin b'neihem, and they distribute it. So you don't give it to a specific kohen. You give it to the kohen group that's on watch, and they split the proceeds of everyone who brings bikurim to the base of mikdash, mikdash, exactly like the other kodshim that are distributed inside the mikdash. Okay. All right, now we like do a complete context switch over here. Eh, what on earth were we talking about? An androgynous for now. I mean, we just dealt a few Mishnahs ago um, with cases where things were comparable to one thing in some ways and comparable to other things in other ways. And at this point, for some reason, we are switching back to that pattern um, by looking at the hermaphrodite and say how יש בו דרכים ששווה לאנשים ויש בו דרכים שווה לנשים. He's got ways that he's. I'm going to just use the pronoun he because we don't have a zimzer or whatever the modern fashion is. But
Right.
what we have over here there's a real medical condition called hermaphroditism, and there are actually some rather famous people who are hermaphrodites, and you wouldn't know. Um, but it's basically a doctor friend of mine explained this to me that that they do develop both aspects of sexuality in their sexual organs, and they may show more or less of one or the other, but it is a real medical condition. Okay, so so the halacha of this androgynous is going to follow males in some ways and females in other ways. And invariably, again, because you've got the suffix, you're going to be machmir in every direction. And
Mhm.
when it comes to mammonos, because we are going to have questions of mammonos in here as well, he's always on the back foot because he's got to come and prove what his status is in order to
Right.
make his claim as either a man or as a woman. Okay. So יש בו דרכים שווה לאנשים ולנשים, similar in both ways, ויש בו דרכים שאין שווה לא לאנשים ולא לנשים. Okay, so what are the ways in which what are the characteristics of the hermaphrodite? כיצד שווה לאנשים? Okay, how is he like a man? Again, these are all going to be chumras. מטמא בלובן כאנשים. So if he has a white emission, like semen, okay, he becomes tame, which is not the case of a woman. Mis'atef ka'anashim, he must dress like a man. So that's an interesting thing. They had to declare something about the hermaphrodite and say, okay, should he dress like a man or like a woman? And they've asked him he should dress like a man, um, right? That he shouldn't be wearing women's clothing. V'nosei aval lo nisa ka'anashim, and he may marry a woman, but he may not be taken in marriage but he may not be taken in marriage.
Right.
Okay, now what is the reasoning for this? Is that the Torah prohibits male homosexuality. It does not prohibit female homosexuality. So therefore, in the case, let's say in the worst case is like it's a woman with a woman. Okay, that's not that's not prohibited by the Torah. So so he's allowed to take a wife, and even though there are going to be questions about the kiddushin because it'll be a suffix kiddushin, but nonetheless he may live with a woman. Well, if he takes this woman as a wife.
Right.
Okay. The imo yosheves alav bedam tohar ka'anashim. Now, when his mother gives birth to this indeterminate child, she's got the chumras of in both directions. She has to keep dam tohar like a male, right? The dam tohar is 33 days after
Mhm.
after her first seven.
Right.
Okay, so she gets dam tohar only for 33 days, not for 66 days like for a girl.
Mhm.
But whereas we're going to see in the next Mishnah that she's got to keep the tumah though for 14 days like for a girl. So she actually only gets 14 out of 40. So she actually only gets 26 days of Tara. Okay. Ve'eno misyached im hanashim ka'anashim. He may not be in yichud with women. Okay. If he's not married, of course.
Right.
If he is actually married to the woman, then mima nafshach. If he's a male, then that's his wife, and if it's a female, then he's allowed to be in yichud with her. Okay, but this is for a woman that he's not married to. Ve'enon nizon im habanos ka'anashim. He does not get so now if this is a child who's now orphaned, um, so daughters get daughters are kept uh, um they must be given their food. They must be given living expenses out of the estate of the late father, in order until they get married. Sons inherit, but their inheritance is on lien to feeding their sisters. But this hermaphrodite child cannot claim mazonos because he's got to prove that he's a woman in order to do that. Okay, so just like men, he doesn't get mazonos from the father's estate. ועובר על בעל תקיף ובעל תשחיס ובעל תיטמא למייסים כאנשים. So he is liable to, well, he has to keep the mitzvahs of Baal Takif. He's not allowed to round off the corner, his head, right? So he's got to preserve his payers. Okay. And also Baal Tashchis, he's not allowed to shave his beard. And if he's a Kohen, if he's the child of a Kohen, he's not allowed to become Tameh. Okay. And he has to keep all of the mitzvahs in the Torah that men have to keep. Okay, and that's where we're going to leave on the cliffhanger before we find out he's like a woman.
When you're talking about that, I was thinking, I bet today, if they're not working on it already, they will work on it. Something about this has something to do with the genes, something to do with the DNA and all. I bet you they're trying to work on something for people who have this
Yeah.
and to see how can adjust this, which is kind of dangerous, I think, because it's going to an area where maybe they shouldn't be going.
Uh-huh.
Because they could be doing other things, making like the perfect person and kind of thing. You know what I mean?
I'm not following you. What are you saying?
They I could picture them trying to work on changing the genes in some way or changing the DNA in some ways so that they're either going to be a man or they could be a female, one or
Yeah,
the other.
I'm sure there'll be lots of fiddling with genetics. Um, I mean, if they work out how to, they'll probably work be able to manipulate babies so that they're like really good looking and have perfect teeth and
Right. No braces, right?
yeah.
All right. Okay, but Bikkurim, um, Aleph, Yud Aleph. And these bring and
Few.
recite from,
Add a few.
right?
Uh, and these bring in recite. Yes, go on.
And these bring in and recite from Shavuos until Sukkot, from the seven species, from the fruits of the mountains, from the dates of the valleys, and from the oil olives beyond the Jordan. Rabbi Yossi Agili says one does not bring Bikurim from beyond the Yarden because since it is not a land flowing with milk and honey. He who buys, let's flip the page. No, he who buys 3 trees as his fellows brings and recites, but Meah says even 2. If he bought a tree and its ground brings and recites. Yehuda says tenants and lessees also bring and recite. The Truma and Bikurim, one is liable to death, and the added fifth, they are forbidden to non-priests and all the property of the priest. They are voided in 101, and they require the washing of the hands at sundown, and these apply to Truma and to Bikurim, but not to Misa. Okay. On to my Shani. Okay. Um, Rabbi Yehuda says at first they used to dispatch to the householders of the provinces, hasten and prepare your produce before the beer season arrives, until Rabbi Akiva came and taught all all produce that has not reached the tithing season was exempt from beer. If when the produce lay at a distance from him, he must confer upon it a name. It happened once that Rabbi Gamliel and the elders were traveling on a ship, and Rabbi Gamliel said, "The tithe that I shall measure is given to Yeshua, and its location is leased to him. Another tithe that I shall measure is given to Akiva, son of Yosef. We shall take possession of it on behalf of the poor, and its location is leased to him." Rabbi Yeshua said, "The tithe that I shall measure is given to the Elazar, son of Azariah, and its location is leased to him, and they received rent from one another." Okay. At Mincha on the final, that's it. No, is that one
Yeah, yeah,
more?
one more.
At Mincha on the final festival day, they would recite the confession. How is the confession made? I have removed the hallowed things out of my house. This is my Sheni and Netha Revi. I have given them to the Levite, and this is my Levi. And also I have given this is Truma and Truma's Misa to the stranger, the fatherless, and the widow. And this is Misa Ani and Leket, Shekeshekaka, and Peah, and though they did not impede the confession, out of my house, this is Chala. Okay.
Okay.
And 1, 2, 8. Go. Okay, Shavias. Base. One may manure and hoe cucumber and gourd fields until Rosh Hashanah. Likewise, irrigated fields. One may cut off flaws, strip off leaves, cover up with dirt, or fumigate until Rosh Hashanah. Rabbi Shimon says one may even remove a leaf from a grape cluster in the seventh year. One may clear away the stones until Rosh Hashanah, and one may clip, prune, and remove the redundants until Rosh Hashanah. Rabbi Yeshua says what applies to pruning and removing the redundants in the fifth year also applies in the sixth year. Rabbi Shimon says, so long as I am permitted to tend a tree, I am permitted to remove the redundants. One may besmear saplings, wrap them brown, trim them, make shelters for them, and water them until Rosh Hashanah. Rabbi Elazar ben Tzaddik says, even in the seventh year, one may water the branches, but not the roots.
Yeah.
Okay. And para. Hey. All derivatives of tumah do not contaminate utensils, but they do contaminate liquids. If a liquid contracts tumah, it contaminates the utensils. Thus, this one says that which contaminates tumah to you cannot contaminate me, yet you can contaminate me. An earthenware vessel cannot contaminate another earthenware vessel, but it does contaminate liquids. If a liquid contracts tumah, it contaminates it. Thus, this one says that which contaminates you cannot contaminate me, yet you can contaminate me. Anything that renders tumah unfit contaminates liquids to a beginning level of tumah with the capacity to contaminate one and render unfit one, except for a tevel yom. Thus, this one says that which contaminates you cannot contaminate me, yet you can contaminate me. Okay. Okay. Test Yud Aleph. Blood that is applied inside, which became mixed with blood that is applied outside, should be poured into the canal. If he applied it outside and then applied it inside, it is valid. If he applied it inside and then applied it outside, Rabbi Akiva disqualifies, but the sages come and say validate. For Rabbi Akiva has said all offerings whose blood was introduced into the sanctuary to atone are disqualified, but the Chachamim said only a chatas offering. But Elias says also the asham offering, for it is said as the chatas offering, so the ash. But as the katos offering, so the asham offering. If the katos offering had his blood received in two cups, and one of them was taken outside the courtyard, the inner one remains valid. If one of them was brought inside the sanctuary, Rosh Yogili validates the offering for the outside cup, but the sages disqualify it. Said Rabbi Yossi Agili, if in regard to the place about which you inherit intent disqualifies outside the courtyard, we do not treat that which remains the same as that which has been taken out. Then, in regard to a place about which intent does not disqualify inside the sanctuary, we should certainly not treat that which remains the same as that which was brought in. If it was brought into the sanctuary to make atonement, even if it was not used to make atonement, it is disqualified. And these are the words of Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Shimon says, until he makes atonement, Rabbi Yehuda says, if he brought it in unintentionally, it is valid. All disqualified bloods which are applied to the altar, the tzitz does not affect their acceptance, except for blood contaminated with tumah. For the tzitz renders tumah acceptable, but does not render that which has been taken out acceptable. And the altar sanctifies that which is fit for. Rabbi Yehuda says, whatever is fit for the altar's fires, once it has gone up on the altar, should not be taken down, as it is stated. It is the olah offering that stays on the pyre on the altar. Just as an olah offering, which is something fit for the altar's fires, should not be taken down once it has gone up on the altar, so too, anything which is fit for the fires should not be taken down once it has gone up on the altar. Rabbi Gamil says, whatever is fit for the altar should not be taken down once it has gone up on the altar, as it is said, it is the olah offering that stays on the pyre on the altar. Just as the olah offering, which is something fit for the altar, should not be taken down once it has gone up on the altar, so too anything which is fit for the altar should not be taken down once it has gone up on the altar. The only difference between the view of Rabbi Gamil and the view of Rabbi Yehuda is regard to blood and libations, concerning which Rabbi Gamil says they should not be taken down. Rabbi Yehuda says they should be taken down. Rabbi Shimon says whether the offering is valid and libations are valid, or libations are valid and the offering is invalid, even if they are both invalid, the offering should not be taken down, but libations should be taken down. Okay. Tubos. Okay, here we go. Okay. Yud Aleph base. A widow after eresin or after marriage may sell without the sanction of a court. Rabbi Shimon says after marriage she may sell without the sanction of a court. If the eresin, she may not sell except with the sanction of a court, because she is not entitled to a sustenance, and whoever is not entitled to sustenance may not sell except with the sanction of a court. If she sold her ketubah or part of it, or if she pledged that her ketubah or part of it, or if she gave her ketubah or part of it as a gift to another person, she may not sell the rest except for the sanction of a court. The comments say, however, that she may sell even 4 or 5 times and may sell for sustenance without sanction of a court, but she should write, I sold for sustenance, but a divorcee may not sell except for the sanction of a court. A widow whose ketubah was 200 zuz and who sold property worth 100 for 200 or property worth 200 for 100 has received her ketubah. If a ketubah was 100 and she sold property worth 100 and a dinah for 100, her sale is void. Even if she says, I will return a dinah to the heirs, her sale is void. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says her sale is always valid unless there will be enough for her to leave over in a field an area of 9 kavim, in a garden an area of half a kav, and according to Rabbi Akiva's view, an area of a quarter of a kav. If her ketubah was 400 zuz and she and she sold this one for 100 and to this one for 100 and the last one property worth 100 and a dinner for 100, the sale of the last one is void, but the sale of all the others are valid. Okay. One more?
Yeah.
Thought so. The appraisal of the judges who undervalued the property by a sixth or outvalued it by a sixth, their sale is invalid. Your Shimon ben Gamliel says their sale is valid. Otherwise, the Pharaoh has the power of the court. But if they drew up a deed of inspection, even if they sold property worth 100 zuz for 200 or property worth 200 for 100, their sale is valid.
Okay.
Good. Oh, good. I'm glad we got this in today.